Okay, no problem. You can lower your hand. Any question you have related to the topic we are discussing, just interrupt me by raising your hand and I'll take your question. Any other questions, I'll answer at the end of the session. Fine then, so let's get started with today's session. So, since many are new to SAP, I'll start with explaining what is ERP. SAP is an ERP product, so let's quickly understand what is this ERP architecture, and then we'll move on to understand the role of an ABAP consultant, what exactly we do as an ABAP consultant in an organization, right? So, as I said, anytime you have any questions, simply raise your hand and I'll take your questions. So, anyone would quickly like to tell me what is this ERP? What do you understand by ERP? Those who are already into SAP or working in an ERP product would like to try? What do you understand by ERP?
Enterprise resource planning. Okay,
what exactly that means?
The resources of the enterprise has to be planned ahead.
Okay. Let me ask someone else. Srinivas?
Yeah, this is ERP enterprise resource planning, right?
Yes. So what do you understand by that?
Any enterprise can use this application to get their problems solved
Okay.
in corporate sections.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sunny? Sunny, would you like to answer? Okay, anyways, so let me explain. ERP, as most of you know, it's enterprise resource planning, but what exactly that means? Before we understand ERP, let's try to understand what is a non-ERP architecture. How does a non-ERP system works basically? We all know that every organization will have different departments, and each department has a specific role to play in running our business, right? So if you look at this on the screen, I have different departments. So to understand this concept of ERP, let's assume I have a company. I run this company wherein my business is to sell laptop computers. So to run this business, I have different departments. So let's say in my company, I have sales departments, I have this materials department, I have the production department, and I have this finance department, right? So my business is to sell laptop computers. So my business process is very simple. I take orders from my customers, and based on the orders, my sales team will take care of that, getting the orders. Then my materials department will take care of getting all the raw material that is required to build these laptop computers, like the motherboards, hard disk, RAM, all this stuff. And my production department will take care of producing or building the laptop. And all the accounting stuff is handled by my finance department. So this is a very simple business I run. Now, different companies follow different manufacturing process. Let's say in my company, I follow BTO process, that is build to order. If I'm selling a very expensive laptop, which I don't expect to sell too many of them, I get very few orders for those laptops. Those products I can keep under BTO process, build to order, wherein I'll be building the laptop only after I receive the order. So I don't spend money in buying all the raw material and keep the laptop ready even before my customer wants to buy it. What I would do is once my customer places an order for a laptop, then I'll start procuring the required raw material, and then I'll build the laptop and then ship it to my customer. So that's a BTO process. For few laptops which are fast moving, very normal configuration which is required by everyone, those laptops I can keep it under a CTO process, configure to order, wherein I already have all the required raw material in my for the laptop, and then all I have to do is the moment I receive an order, I have to simply configure the laptop based on my customer's requirements and then ship it to my customer. Just to understand this process, just to relate what I'm going to explain, I've just pulled out this Dell website. If you see in this Dell website, there are different models of laptops. For few, they're saying estimated ship date is 18 Jan, and for few, they have an estimated ship date of less than 5 days, right? If I open any other model, so here if you see, for this model, they are saying estimated ship date is around 22nd Jan. For this, it is 17th Jan, right? So few they are shipping within 5 days. Few this one is shipping within a day, because for this they are following the CTO process where they have all the raw material available. They have to simply configure it as per my requirement and ship it. So they just need 1 day for that. Whereas for other laptops, if you see, this laptop has an estimated ship date of 30th January. That means they need at least 20 days before they can ship this laptop, because it's a new model. So maybe they are following a BTO process for this model, right? I don't work for Dell, so I'm not too sure what process they follow. But for our example, let's assume that for this model, XPS 12, I'm following a BTO process, whereas for this model, Inspiron 15Z, I'm following a CTO process. So how does the business transaction work here? First, my sales team will get the orders. They'll visit the customers. They'll take the requirements. A few customers may want a i5 processor with a 500 GB hard disk. Few customers may want an i7 processor with 1 TB hard disk. So my sales team will get me all that information. Once the sales team gets this information, if you're following a BTO process, then they'll pass on this information to my materials department. Then my materials department will get me the required raw material to build this laptop. Once the material team procures the raw material, then the production team will build the laptop. And let's say we also have this logistics department, which will take care of shipping the product to our customer. And then whatever amount the customer pays, that would be handled by the finance department. So that's how it works. And as you can see on the screen, in non-ERP setup, every department is connected to their own database. That means if the sales guy is creating a sales order to capture the order information, then that information is saved in his database, in the sales database. The same way when the materials team procures the raw material, all the material information will be saved in their database, the materials department database. This production people, once they start building the laptop, whatever information they capture, that would be available in the production department's database. So as you can see, every department is connected to their own database. So that's a non-ERP setup. In ERP setup, all the departments are connected to the same database. Now, what's the big deal if your departments are connected to the same database, or if they are connected to different database? What happens? So let's try to understand what issues we face in a non-ERP setup. Now, my sales guy gets me the orders. This order information, when he creates a sales order, for example, let's say he's using this application. This is your SAP screen. I'll be explaining you how to use the SAP system, how to navigate all this later. For the timing, just try to understand the concept. So let's say this is my sales order. So let's say the sales department, the sales guy will be using an application to create a sales order, one software. This software can access the data available only in the sales department, right? So he'll be using this, something like this, to create a sales order. So what issues do we face if you are using a non-ERP setup? Couple of things here. One thing is the data is not exchanged in real time. Now, if I say taking the order from taking the order to delivering the product to the customer as one business transaction, then each business transaction typically involves multiple departments, right? And all these departments have to exchange some data between them. So in a non-ERP setup, since one department cannot access the data of another department, they have to depend on the manual process. So the moment the sales guy gets the order information, the materials team cannot act on that information unless the sales guy sends this information to the materials department. So you can capture all the order details, and let's say you can mail the materials department about this, and then the materials department can act on that data. Right? Now, first issue is the data is not exchanged in real time. What that means is, for example, if I'm following a CTO process, configure to order process, then the sales guy has to, before he can take an order, he has to check whether that material is available or not. Only then he can take the order. Now, since he has access only to the sales database, he cannot validate whether a particular material is available in stock or not, because this information is stored in the materials database, right? So what he has to do, every time before taking the order, he has to call this materials guy and ask them whether this particular material is available or whether you can take the order for that material, right? So you need to manually check with them. Now, you may say, instead of calling the materials department every time, why can't the materials department send a list of materials available every day in the morning so that the material sales guy can easily verify whether a particular material is available or not? Even in that case, you would have problems. For example, let's say I have two sales people trying to get me orders, and this materials department consolidates all the material information availability and sends the salespeople a mail in the morning saying that this is the availability of materials. Now, let's say the materials department says we have 50 motherboards available. That means you can take orders for 50 laptops. Now, I have two sales guys trying to take the orders. And in the morning, 9 a.m., one sales guy already gets me orders for 50 laptops, right? The second sales guy is trying to take an order at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Now, can he depend on the data that was sent in the morning? Because in the morning he has received a mail saying that there are 50 motherboards available. But meanwhile, the other sales guy has already got the orders for 50 laptops, so those materials are consumed. There are no more motherboards available. So you cannot depend on that data. Again, you need to check with the materials guy for the latest information. So the data is not exchanged in real time between these departments. So that's one issue. The other issue is you cannot develop software applications to automate your process. Here, the sales guy is depending on the manual process of verifying with the materials team every time before he takes the order, right? So in an ERP setup, what I can do is, since my applications can access data across the departments, I can simply develop an application like this. For example, here this is an application to create a sales order. The moment I enter the material number in this order and hit enter, this application, in a non-ERP setup, this application can access the data available only in the sales department. So it can only validate that information. It cannot validate the material related information, right? But whereas in an ERP setup, since all the departments are connected to the same database, all the data about your organization is available in a single database, this application can automatically connect to the materials information, access the material related information that was updated by the materials team, and validate whether this material is available in stock or not, right? So the sales guy need not worry about anything. The moment the material team updates in their system saying that this material is out of stock, and the sales guy, if he tries to enter that material in the order, this application can itself validate and throw an error saying that this material is no more available. The same way, if you look at the simple thing like providing the estimated delivery time, as we saw in the Dell website. Now, there could be so many things that could influence this date, right? The materials team can take, let's say, a couple of days to procure the raw material. The production team can take, again, a couple of days to build the laptop, and the logistics team can take, again, a couple of days to ship the product. So total, we have 6 days. Right from taking the order to delivering the product, we have around 6 days if everything goes fine. Now, there could be so many things that can go wrong. Now, the materials team tries to procure 50 motherboards from Intel, and Intel says they're out of stock, and they need 1 week to give them those motherboards. In that case, the materials team cannot procure the required raw material within the two-day window, so that will be delayed. Now, the sales guy should have this information, this up-to-date information, before he can give an estimate to his customer as to when he can expect the delivery of the product, right? So in a non-ERP setup, again, just to understand whether the material is available or if the production is having any issues, if there are any backlogs. The sales guy has to manually check every time with the other departments in a non-ERP setup, because neither he nor his software application can access data about other departments. And we avoid all such problems with an ERP setup wherein all the data is available at one place, right? So in an ERP setup, you have one database, and in the same database, we have different database tables in which you store different data, right? So here, if you see the sales data, let's assume the sales data is saved in table 1, the materials data is saved in table 2, production data goes to table 3, and finance data goes to table 4. Now I can develop applications which can access all the data from different tables and process that data, right? Now as a business owner, for example, I want to run a report which gives me a complete picture of my business transaction, from how many orders I received this month to how many we could ship, how much money I made. So if I run this report in a non-ERP setup, if I run this report in a sales department, this report can only give me information about the orders we received. Now, if I run this report in the materials department, it can only give me information about the materials we procured, right? The same way, if I run the report in production department, it can only tell me how many laptops we built this month, right? This report in itself cannot give me the complete picture on the business transaction, because this report does not have access to all the data, right? Whereas the same report, if I run in an ERP setup, since it can access data from across departments, it can give me a complete picture of my business transaction. If I run this report in the system, it can process the data from these different tables and tell me that we have received this many orders, this many materials we procured. Let's say we received 30 orders this month. We could procure raw material for 20 laptops. Then the production department could build those 20 laptops and they were shipped to our customer. Now, with that, I can identify that, okay, we are getting enough orders every month, but we are not making enough money just because my materials team is not able to procure the required raw material on time. So that's because the vendor is not able to supply the required raw material. So let me change the vendor so I can take better business decisions, right? So you can have applications developed which automate a lot of things for you. So in simple terms, non-ERP setup, every department is connected to their own database. So every department will use their own standalone software applications. If you have heard about this Tally software, which is used by the accounts department, the same way the sales team will use their own software to take orders and stuff like that. Whereas in ERP setup, it's just one unified system, and within this one software, you have hundreds of applications which can access, again, all applications can access all the data. So you have one software and you have hundreds of applications, and based on your role in the company, you'll be using your set of applications. For example, I've logged into this SAP system. This is the SAP screen. So this application, the sales team can use to create orders. Now, if you are a materials guy and you want to create a material, then you can, in the same system, you can open a different application which will let you create a material. So this application I can use to create a material. Now, if you are an accounting guy and you want to create an accounting document, I can open another application which will let me create an accounting document. Okay, so we have one software, and in that we have hundreds of applications. Based on your role in the company, you can use your set of applications. Right. So any questions so far? Bhasha? Bhasha, do you have a question? Okay. Srinivas, Sunny, if you don't have a question, please lower your hand. Kishore?
Hi, Kiran.
Yeah.
This is Kishore. I have a question. You mentioned different applications on single platform.
Mm-hmm.
Can I assume is it a single database contains different tables, or a single platform contains different databases?
You have
And
one
which one
single
is
database. You have one single database, and in that database you have hundreds of tables. For example, uh, if I open a table for you to see, this I have one table called Mara, in which I store all the material data.
okay?
I have another table called, let's say, VBRK. In this table, I'll store all the invoice billing document details. Right.
Okay.
So I have another table, let's say EKKO. In this table, I'll store all the purchase order related details, purchasing document
Okay.
data. So we have one database and you have hundreds of tables, and we store this data in different tables. Now, if I develop a program, if I want to access the purchase order details, then I can query this table to get the purchase order related data. And then if at the same time, if I want to access the billing document data also, then I can query that table in which I'm storing the billing document details, and I can get the billing document details. So your program will have access to all these tables in the database.
Okay. So different tables are tied together in a single database. Is
Yes.
that a correct
Yes.
statement?
Yeah, it's just we have one database and you have hundreds of database tables.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Kiran.
Okay. Kaushik?
Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
Go ahead.
So one thing I would like to know is,
Mhm.
in this ABAP module,
Mhm.
all we have to do is we have to make code so that we can make this application run on hold.
I'll be telling you what exactly we do as an
Okay.
ABAP consultant.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Fine.
Sunny? Ramesh? Okay. So that's about ERP, a basic difference between an ERP setup and a non-ERP setup. Now, as you see, there are quite a few advantages of using an ERP system. And if you're a big organization, if you are a multinational organization, MNCs, where you're doing your business across the globe, then you cannot manage your business if you're not using an ERP system. Right? So these days, most of the companies use an ERP system. And SAP is an ERP product, it's an ERP software. So like SAP, we have other ERP products also, but SAP is the market leader in ERP. So since most of the companies will be using an ERP system, so they have to use one ERP software to do their business. So since this training is about SAP, let's try to understand how it is in SAP, right? So in SAP, we have different modules. We have functional modules and we have technical modules. So every department, you can relate that to a one functional module. For example, you have HR department in your organization, so we call it HR module in SAP. The same way for sales, we have SD module. For MM, we have MM module, materials management. We have production planning. We have finance. We have warehouse management. So there are quite a few functional modules. So every department translates to one module in SAP. So that's the functional module. And we also have technical modules like ABAP, BASIS, all these are your technical modules in SAP, which has to do with the technical aspects of SAP, nothing functional. So in functional, we have these different modules, FI, CO, HR, SD, MM, PM, PP, and there are a lot of modules. So as I said, every department translates to one functional module in SAP. Now, based on your role in the company, for example, if you are working in the company as an HR executive, you'll be using all the HR module related applications, HR module related tables and stuff like that. Now, we also have these technical modules, BASIS, ABAP, BI, BW, XI, PI, Enterprise Portal. So all these are your technical modules. For example, if you're trying to log in to the SAP system and you're facing some issues, or the SAP system is too slow, you're trying to open an application and it's taking half an hour to open the application. So you're facing some issues with the SAP system. Then this BASIS consultant will take care of fixing those problems. His role is to maintain the SAP system. So that's the basis job. Or if you join an organization, somebody has to create a user ID password for you to log into the SAP system, right? So this basis guy will do all that for you. Now ABAP is a programming language we use in SAP to develop applications in SAP. So if your end user, the person who's using this SAP system to do his day-to-day work in the organization, if he says, I want a new report, I want to see this information, we don't have anything for that, I want somebody to develop me a new report which I can run to get this information, then as an ABAP developer, we'll be developing those programs. So our role is to develop and customize applications. So I'll be talking about that in detail in a while. The same way we have BI, BW, business intelligence, wherein if you want to process huge data and make some sense out of that data, you can use this BI module for that. Then if you have too many systems and you want to push data from one system to the other system, you want to integrate different systems with your SAP system, we have this XIPI for that. So it's more about integrating different systems and pushing data from one system to the other. Then if you want to develop web applications, then we have this enterprise portal. So the portal is, EP is one module in SAP where you can use Java to develop your web applications. Since 6.0 SAP has supported this WebDyn Pro ABAP, so you can develop web applications even using ABAP now. So we no more need this portal. So talking about the different types of users in SAP, we have three types of users basically. We have end users, we have functional consultants, and we have technical consultants. End users are people who are the actual workers in your organization. For example, if you are working as a sales representative in the company, then you'll be using the SAP system to take your orders and stuff like that. So to do your day-to-day job, you'll be using the SAP system, either to take orders or create invoices, anything like that. So you are the end user, the person who's actually working in the company to do the business. He'll be using the SAP system to carry out his day-to-day activities. So if you are a HR manager and you want to see the salary of one employee, then you'll be using one application to do that. So you are the end user, HR executive. So those are the end users. So those are the people who will be actually using the SAP system in the production environment. Then we have functional consultants, people who have good understanding of these functional modules can become a functional consultant. For example, let's say you worked as an HR executive in one company for 5 years or 8 years. You understand the HR process well. You understand how the payroll is done. You understand how the benefits are calculated. You understand how leave management works. So you are familiar with all the HR process. So with that knowledge, you can learn HR functional in SAP and become a functional consultant in SAP. I'll be telling you the role of a functional consultant. Then we have technical consultants, people who have good understanding of these technical modules, be it ABAP, BASIS, BI, BW, XIPI, they can become technical consultants. So if you're learning this course, if you're doing this course to learn ABAP, then you'll be becoming an ABAP consultant, which is a technical module. So you'll be a technical consultant in SAP, right? So for example, if the user is trying to do something and he's facing an issue, now he says, while doing the MRP run, I'm facing this issue. As a technical consultant, as an ABAP consultant, you'll be the one who will be fixing that issue. But if the user says, while doing the MRP run, I'm facing this issue, you won't understand what exactly he means by that, right? Because you are a purely technical consultant. You only understand the technical aspects of SAP. You don't understand the functional aspects, right? So as a technical consultant, I cannot interact with my end user directly because I won't be having the required business knowledge to understand what they are trying to tell me. Right? So we have these functional consultants who have a very good understanding of the business process, and they also have good understanding of the SAP system. So if the end user tells this functional consultant saying that while doing the MRP run, I'm facing this issue, since this functional consultant also understands the business, he understands what is this MRP run is and what exactly the issue is this end user is facing. So this functional consultant will understand what the business needs, what the user needs, and then he'll try to explain that same requirement in more technical terms to the technical consultant, saying that, for example, if the user is saying while doing the MRP run I'm facing this issue, Then the functional consultant, the same information will pass on to the ABAP consultant, saying that what the user means is while he's running this application with this data, some data is not getting updated in this particular table, so kindly check this and make sure this data gets updated in this table. So he'll be explaining me that requirement in more technical terms, so I can understand it better. So as a technical consultant, as a pure technical consultant, we really don't need to understand business, because we always have these functional consultants who will explain us what the business needs, right? But as a functional consultant, you need to understand business. If you don't understand business, you cannot understand what the user is trying to tell you. So that's why to become a functional consultant, you should have some good domain experience. Whereas to become a technical consultant, you don't really need any domain experience, right? You should be technically sound. So you should know how to develop applications, how to fix problems, all these things. All the business terminology, if you don't understand, you can always ask your functional consultants to explain you what exactly they mean by that, right? So that's why many people get misguided. To get a job in SAP, you should have some experience. To get a job in SAP as a functional consultant, yes, you need to have some experience. Without experience, you cannot become a functional consultant. But to become a technical consultant, you really don't need to have any prior experience as such. It's not mandatory. You can be a technical consultant without any domain knowledge also. But you should be technically sound. Right? So these are the different types of users. We also have another category called techno-functional consultants, a person who has good understanding of the technical aspects of SAP as well as the functional aspects can become a techno-functional consultant. For example, you are working as an ABAP consultant, which is a technical module. Let's say you work for 3 to 4 years as an ABAP consultant. Then you can pick up any of the functional modules. You can learn any of these functional modules. When you work as an ABAP consultant, since you'll be working on these applications which are used by the business to do their day-to-day activities, you'll be gaining a lot of business knowledge in that process. You'll be understanding different business terminology, what exactly things are set, how things work, was the relationship between a purchase order, a sales order, a billing document. So you'll be getting all this business knowledge once you start working as an ABAP consultant. So after spending 3-4 years, once you gain sufficient business knowledge, you can learn any of the functional modules. For example, you can learn SD functional module, and then since now you know the technical aspect as well as the functional aspects, you can become a techno-functional consultant, right? So the same way, a functional consultant can learn ABAP and become a techno-functional consultant. So a person who knows both the technical and the functional parts, we call them techno-functional consultants. And these days the demand is more for techno-functional consultants, because one guy can do both the jobs, right? Otherwise, the company has to recruit a separate functional consultant and a separate technical consultant. So if you know both, then they can just recruit one person and get the job done, right? So that's another option. Now coming to the role of an ABAP consultant. So since this training is more about ABAP, let's try to understand what exactly we do as an ABAP consultant. So before we understand the role of an ABAP consultant, let's try to understand what this SAP system is all about. When you implement the SAP system in your company, SAP has already developed all the required applications for you to do your day-to-day activities. So SAP has already taken care of developing different applications. For example, all the applications that I'm opening now are standard SAP applications. These applications come with the SAP system. So when you implement SAP, by default, you'll have all these applications ready. So if you implement SAP in your company and you want to create materials in your company, you don't need to do any new developments. You can simply open this application provided by SAP to create a material and you're good to go, right? So SAP has already developed all the required applications for you to do your day-to-day activities. So we have applications for every department, every module. So the SAP software is the standard business software that needs to be adapted to company specific requirements when it is implemented. The process of adapting the software is known as customizing. Now I said SAP has already provided you all the applications that you need to run your business, right? So for example, if I want to create a material, I can simply use this application to create a material. I'll select few options here. let's say I'll input the description for this material, I'll maintain the base unit of measure. So if this application is letting me capture all the information I need to create a material, I can simply use this application. I don't need to make any more changes. But let's say I'm into designing. So for every material I create, I need to associate one art number, a design number for that material, right? So I'm trying to use this standard SAP application provided by SAP to create a material, and I don't see anywhere to input this design number. It doesn't give me an option to input a design number anywhere, right? It's asking me to enter the material group, all the other information, but I don't see anywhere it's giving me an option where I can capture this design number. That means the standard SAP application does not meet my company specific requirements, right? So I cannot use this standard SAP application, right? But in another company, if you don't have to capture this extra information, if you capture the standard information about the material, then you can simply use this application. You don't need to make any changes to this application, right? So changes to repository objects. Repository object means all the programs, tables, all these things are not absolutely necessary for the use of an SAP system. As I said, it's not mandatory that you should change something before you use these applications. If the application is meeting your requirements, then you can simply use that application. You don't need to make any changes. But if necessary, however, you can change individual objects. As I said, in my company requirement, I need to capture some extra information while creating the material, and the standard SAP application is not providing me an option where I can input these details. So this application does not meet my company specific requirements. Obviously, SAP cannot anticipate all these things and give all the options in the application, right? So it's an industry specific software. So when SAP has developed these applications, they said, okay, in a manufacturing industry, this is the process, the standard process they'll follow. So these are the applications they might need. So every organization will be creating materials, and this is the standard information they'll be capturing while creating the material. So let us give these options, right? But few companies will have very company specific requirements, like my company, wherein I need to capture the design number, right? Which is not provided by which I cannot do by using this standard SAP application. So how do we customize this standard SAP software then, if it is not meeting your company specific requirements? We have three options here. Changes or extensions to the repository are possible in a variety of ways. You can develop your own applications, that's customer developments. You can enhance the standard SAP applications that we call customer enhancements, or you can simply modify the standard SAP application. Okay, so either you can modify the program to meet your requirement, wherein you can go to the source code of this program. For example, this is the program for that application. So I can go to the source code of this program and I can simply change it. I can change the source code, right? So they're calling something here. So I can directly go to change mode and edit this code to capture that extra information, the design number. So that we call modification, where you're modifying the standard SAP program provided by SAP. So SAP lets you modify their programs. So once you implement SAP, you can modify if you want to. There's no restriction. All you have to do is enter the access code and you're good to modify the program. So one option is to modify the standard SAP program provided by SAP to meet your company specific requirement. That is modifications. The other option is customer enhancements. Without modifying the program, without modifying the source code of the program, I can still get the functionality I need by using this customer enhancements. So we call it enhancement techniques. So there are different enhancement techniques we can use to enhance the standard SAP application to meet your company specific requirements. So that's enhancement. Now, these enhancements are available only if SAP has anticipated and provided some openings in the code where you can add your own code, right? So if SAP has not anticipated, then obviously there won't be any enhancements available for you to implement. In that case, and if you don't want to modify, you can also develop your own applications. So if you feel what is provided by SAP is not meeting your requirement, or you have some requirement for which SAP has not provided any applications for that specific requirement, then you can develop your own applications also, right? So how do we customize standard SAP program? We can develop our own applications, or we can enhance the existing applications, or we can modify the existing applications. These are the three options we have. And to do this, you need an ABAP consultant. You need somebody, all these applications are developed using ABAP programming language. So you need somebody who understands ABAP programming language so that he can either customize the standard SAP applications or modify them or develop new applications. So that's what your role is as an ABAP consultant. So when you join a company as an ABAP consultant, so you'll be working on either some new developments, you'll be developing new applications, or you'll be enhancing the standard SAP applications, or you'll be modifying. Right? So which one do you think we'll prefer doing? If my user says, I'm using this MM01 application to create materials, but it doesn't let me capture this extra information that I want to capture, so I'm not able to use this transaction to create a material. Then the first thing I look for is, are there any enhancements available to enhance this application? If there are any enhancements available, I'll try to implement them to capture that extra information. If there are no enhancements available, then you can modify, but problem with modification is your code will be overwritten when you upgrade your system. So I'll be showing you how this modification and enhancement concept works. For example, let me quickly develop one program. Let me say, don't worry what I'm typing. If you don't understand, that's absolutely fine. Just try to understand the concept. Let's say this is a simple application. Let's assume this is a standard SAP application provided by SAP. So you cannot directly change this program without entering the access code. So for the time being, even though this is a program I've developed, let's assume this is a standard SAP program. So there's some code in this program. The functionality of this application is, if I input two numbers here, this will multiply these two numbers and show me the result. So this is the standard functionality provided by this application. So if you want to multiply two numbers, you can use this application. Now, in my company, I have a specific requirement where I don't want to multiply these numbers, but I want to add these numbers. Whatever numbers I input on the screen, I want to add these two numbers instead of multiplying. That's the functionality I want. Whereas the standard SAP program is multiplying the numbers, and my user says, for our requirement, we should not multiply, but we should be adding these numbers. Right? Let's assume that's our company specific requirement. So since this application is multiplying the numbers, I cannot use this application to do my in my organization, right? Basically, because I want the numbers to be added. So what options do we have to customize this now? If I say modification, I'll directly go to the source code of this program and modify the code. So here, if I, instead of star, if I say plus, then it will add the numbers. So this is modification, where you are modifying the standard SAP code. What's the problem you'll face if you modify? Now, when I upgrade the system or when I implement these support packages, then the new program, the standard SAP program, will come and replace this program. Since the new program will still have the code to multiply, my changes that I'm making here would be lost. So again, it will be becoming star here instead of plus, because the standard SAP program is having star. So the new program which is replacing my current program in the system would have star again. So after upgrading, again I need to go back and change this program to plus. Right? So if you are doing too many modifications in your system, then it becomes a very big headache to upgrade your system. If you after upgrading, you have to come back and redo all those changes, all those modifications you have done, because all of them would be lost. Right? So if you haven't done any modifications, let's say your upgrade project will take 1 month to complete, but if you have done too many modifications, your upgrade project may take 6 months to complete. Right? So you might have to spend 6 months in upgrading the system. So that's why many companies don't prefer modifying the standard SAP program. So modifying this program is ruled out. So I don't want this to be my first option. Then what other options do we have if I want to get the same functionality? The other option is customer enhancements. So how does this enhancement concept work? In the standard SAP program, if SAP has provided, if it has maintained the logic this way, there is no way you can enhance this application. So I would say there are no enhancements available for this application. But the same thing, if SAP, for example, we have something called a function module. I'm not too sure how many of you understand, so don't bother understanding. I'll just create one function module. So what I can do is, in the main program, SAP, instead of maintaining this program logic this way, if they call one function module and pass this data to this function module and get back the result. So instead of directly maintaining the logic here in the main program, if they're calling one function module here, if I execute this main program, it will still do the same thing. It is still multiplying these numbers. So the result is 6, right? But here, as a customer, if SAP has maintained their programming logic this way, so this is what I mean by openings in the code. Now, if I want to add these numbers, I don't have to change anything in the main program. I can keep this main program code as it is. Without modifying this main program, I can simply modify this function module which is called in the main program. So this would be in your customer namespace when they provide this as an enhancement. Here, if I change it from star to plus, I'm changing this in a different program outside the main program. This is a completely different program, but this is called in the main program. So here I've changed it from star to plus. The main program code remains the same. So I'm not modifying anything in the main program. Now if I execute this, if I give 2 and 3 here, now instead of multiplying, it is adding the numbers. So I'm getting the functionality I need without actually changing the code of my main program, right? So this is how the enhancement works, right? So there are different enhancement techniques we use. So based on how this opening is provided, we call it either a user exit or a customer exit or a body, right? So we have different enhancement techniques available. So we'll be discussing about these enhancements in great detail later. There are so many other things you need to know before I talk about enhancements. So Modification means you are directly changing the code. Enhancement means SAP has provided some openings. In this case, the opening is provided as a call to one function module. So you are actually changing the code in the function module without changing anything in the main program. Since this code gets executed when the main program runs, you are getting the functionality you need. So that's how enhancements are provided. So we are actually getting the functionality we need without actually changing the main program. Now, customer developments, I don't want to modify, and let's say this main program is not calling any functional module, so there are no enhancements available. Then they have maintained the logic this way. So obviously I cannot enhance this. So what I'll do is, since I don't want to modify and there are no enhancements available, I can develop a new application in which I can add the numbers. So I can develop my new application and tell my user that don't use the standard SAP application for your job, use this new application which I've developed. So if you want to create a material and if the standard SAP application is not letting you capture that extra information, don't use the standard SAP application. I've developed a new application for you which works just like this standard SAP application, and along with the option to capture that extra information. So use this new application to create a material. So you can develop your own applications also. So these are the different ways you can customize the standard SAP software. Any questions? Vivek? Vivek, you have a question?
Hello.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
See, in the main app source itself, we have called that function. So we are modifying the main source code itself.
No. I'm just telling you that assuming if SAP has maintained the code this way, they've already maintained the code this way. They're already calling this function module. This is a Z program, custom program I developed, but I'm just trying to give you an example. So if the main program was maintained this way, then I can achieve my functionality without changing anything in the main program.
So that function you are changing.
I'm changing the function module.
Okay, fine, thanks.
So my main program code remains the same. So even if I upgrade, I won't be losing anything because the new program will also have the same code. So I haven't changed anything. So my changes would not be lost.
Okay, understood. Thanks.
And those who don't understand what is this function module, what code I'm typing, don't worry. This is just one example to show you how things work. Right? So you can ignore all this. As long as you understand the concept, that's sufficient. Subha Reddy? Subha Reddy, you have a question?
It's okay, nothing.
Okay. You can lower your hand. Those who are done with your questions, please lower your hand. Gopi?
Hi, Kiran.
Yeah.
What if the function module is also a standard one?
No.
Can we
If
change it?
if the function module is also standard one, then it's not called enhancement. In enhancement, these function modules will be in your customer namespace. For example, if you want to see this, I'm sorry. If you look at this program, all these customer exits will be called as call customer with this statement. And the letters from A to X are reserved for SAP. So if you see any program or anything that is starting with any alphabet from A to X, then that's a standard SAP program. So this is which one? 001. So here if you see. So if you look at this function module name, it's starting with R. That means it's a standard SAP program. All the customer development should take place in customer namespace, that is Y or Z. If the program name is starting with Y or Z, then it's a customer program. So that's why if you see this program when I created, I started the name with Z, right? Because this is the customer namespace. If I don't start the program name with Y or Z, then it will ask me for an access key, because the system will assume that I'm trying to create a standard program, standard SAP program. So all the customer development should be in the customer namespace. That is, they should start with Z or Y. And when you upgrade the system, all the Z programs will not be affected with the upgrade. Right? So at this point in this main program, this is a main program starting with R. They are calling something called call customer function. Right? At this point, they are calling this function module. They are exporting some data. It's importing some data. Right? Now, this function module here, if you see, has a Z include program in it. So I won't be directly writing my code inside this function module. I'll be writing whatever code in this Z include program. Now, since this is a Z program, this is in the customer namespace. So this won't be affected by the upgrade. So you can only use these enhancements if they are provided by SAP, and SAP provides these enhancements this way, where they'll be calling one function module. Within that function module, there will be one Z include program. So you'll be writing your code in that Z program. So when this main program runs, that function module will be called, and that when that function module is called, your code gets executed. So since the code you're writing is still in the customer namespace, your changes would not be lost when you upgrade the system. Okay.
Okay. So you mean to say if the function module is also a standard one and doesn't have any Z program or Z functionalities over there, means we need to create a new application, right?
Either you create a new application or you have to modify it. You cannot enhance it.
Okay.
Okay.
Fine, thank you.
So it's not mandatory that every standard SAP application will have the options to enhance. They are available only if SAP has anticipated. If SAP felt that certain organizations want to do things differently, let me leave an opening, only then we can use those openings. If SAP is not providing the enhancement, then we cannot do anything. The only option we have would be either to modify the standard application or develop our own application. Okay. So it's not mandatory that every application should have some enhancements available.
Thank you.
Please lower your hand if you're done with your question.
Hey Kiran, I was wondering if you could also display the transaction name as well as your explaining the SAP sessions, please.
That's okay for this session, as long as you're understanding the concept, that's sufficient. Obviously, I would
that
be
will
telling
help us revise
I would be telling you
cool.
all the
Thank you.
transactions I use when I start the review process. Sampath?
Yeah, Kiran. Usually, we won't be modifying the SAP standard programs. Is that what you're saying? Is it?
Generally, we don't prefer because, as I said, if you modify the programs, when you upgrade the system, all your changes would be lost. So that becomes a big headache. So once you upgrade, you have to come back and reapply those modifications. So if you have done too many modifications, it becomes very difficult to manage your software. So that's why we avoid modifications.
Yeah, so if the function module is available, then you will go for the enhancement. Otherwise, you will go for the customized program.
Yeah, if I have the enhancement options available, then I would prefer enhancing it. If they are not available, and I would modify. Instead of modifying, what we generally do is, for example, what I can do is, let's assume this is the standard SAP application, and instead of modifying the standard SAP application, what I can do is simply copy this application, copy this program. Let's say one. I'll copy everything. So I don't need to rewrite all the code the standard SAP is providing, and simply do whatever I want to do in this copied program, right? So my user, instead of using this program, he'll be using this new program. So I don't need to develop everything from the scratch. I can simply copy the standard program and then make the necessary changes in the copy so that the standard program still remains intact. Right?
Okay. And one more thing, the customized program starts with name Z. What about Y? What is the difference between Z and Y?
Generally, the production programs, we use Z. For test programs, we use Y.
Okay.
Okay, so both Y and Z you can use. So in a company, when you develop new programs, we use Z. But if you're creating some test programs, then you can use Y.
Okay.
Atul? Atul, your voice is very faint. Could you speak a bit louder?
Kiran, wanted to ask you if you make any changes in standard function module or you just copy your function module and do your changes.
Again, anything standard, if you're modifying, if you change the code, then it's called modification. So once you upgrade, even those would be lost, right? So modification need not be only to a program. It could be to a table, a function module, anything. So we don't prefer modification. So if there are no enhancements, the other option I would look at is try to copy the program and make changes in my copied program rather than changing the main program directly, the standard program directly. Basha, you have a question? Kaushik?
Yeah, I would like to know about this function. Just told about function something, a standardized function whichever. Can you please tell a little bit about this function?
That's okay, don't worry. No, for you to understand what is a function module, there are so many other things you need to know in ABAP, so ignore it.
Exactly.
I'm just trying to tell you that this is how you can provide a functionality in the program. Either I can maintain the logic directly, or I can call something called a function module and maintain the logic in a function module. So
okay, like in other programming language, this particular program also have a main method or a main function, something like this.
yeah, don't worry about all that technical aspects. Just try to understand the concept. Have you understood the difference between modifying something and enhancing something?
Yes, I got
That's
that.
enough. Yeah, that's sufficient for now. Okay. So as I said, I cannot discuss anything about ABAP because there are so many other things you need to know before I can talk about these function modules or anything I'm using today. So we'll be discussing all this in detail later when the time comes, so don't worry about it. So that's the basic difference between modifying a program, developing your own programs, or enhancing a standard SAP program. So I hope that part is clear for you. So to do any of these things, as you have just seen, you need somebody who understands ABAP. Now, that's where we pitch in as an ABAP consultant. Since every company will be customizing the software, many companies, like in our company, we have up to 30% customization. That means we are using 70% of what is provided by SAP, and around 30% we have customized because the standard SAP functionality does not meet our requirements. Then few companies have up to 70% customization, like Nestle has almost 70% customization. So depending from company to company, it varies how much customization you need. But every company will have some customization. So since every company will be customizing this standard SAP software to meet their requirements, that means every company needs an ABAP consultant, right? So as an ABAP consultant, every company needs an ABAP consultant. There won't be any company which has implemented SAP and doesn't require an ABAP consultant, right? So you would always, ABAP consultants are always required to maintain or to develop new applications or to change the existing applications. Other modules, for example, if you look at CRM, a company which wants to use CRM will need a CRM resource. If they don't want to use CRM, they don't need a CRM resource. But ABAP resource, any company which is implementing SAP, they would need an ABAP resource. So here you can see modification, you're directly modifying the program. In enhancement, you're adding your code to the standard program using the openings provided by SAP. So you're not actually modifying the program, you're simply adding your extra code to enhance the program. So that's what is enhancement. And customer developments, we do it in the customer namespace, so where you're developing something from the scratch. So modifications, changes to SAP objects such as programs and table definitions are called modifications. The repository delivered by SAP is not only extended but changed. When you next upgrade your system or when importing support packages, you will therefore need to check these modifications against the repository. Okay, so I said we don't generally prefer modifying the programs, but there's one situation where we don't mind modifying these programs. That situation is, for example, let's say I have implemented this SAP software in India. My company is in India. I'm using this software in India. If the change that I need is specific to my company, then SAP doesn't provide any consulting services. So I need to recruit an ABAP consultant who can either modify the program, enhance the program, or create a new program, right? So if the change is specific to my company. Now, some law has changed in India, and that has affected all the companies that are running in India. So the change that we need to the program is not specific to a company, it's specific to a country or a region, wherein all the companies running in India would need that change in their programs. In such case, SAP releases these nodes or support packages, wherein they'll be implementing those changes in the program and they'll be releasing it. In that case, you can modify the program to implement whatever SAP has recommended. So if SAP itself is telling that there's a bug in this program which we have delivered, please change the code at this line number to this line, then I don't mind modifying because SAP is including that in their release. So when I upgrade, the new program would anyway have those changes in them. So I won't be losing anything. So in that case also we modify. So if the changes that are required to the software are affecting more than one country, one company, if it's a more region specific change, then SAP releases them as the support packages. You can think of it just like a Windows update. Once you install Windows, frequently you'll be getting these Windows updates. Whenever Microsoft finds some loopholes in their software, they'll be releasing these updates, right? The same way SAP also releases this updates as support packages. So if you have modified your programs, then you'll be losing all that when you upgrade the system or when you implement these support packages. Enhancements. In this type of change, you add customer-specific objects to the repository. There are specific places in the coding known as customer exits. We have user exits, customer exits, bodies. All these are different enhancement techniques, which we'll be discussing in detail later, where you can supplement the standard SAP system with your own objects. And there's also one modern method for the customer-specific enhancements called business add-ins. That's bodies. So we have user exits, customer exits, bodies, enhancement points, enhancement spots. All these are the different enhancement techniques that we use to enhance the standard SAP software. So how this opening is provided is what differentiates whether I call that a user exit or a customer exit or a body, right? So these are your enhancements. As I said, we'll be discussing these enhancements in detail later. There are so many other things you need to know before I talk about these enhancements. Then customer developments. In the SAP system, you can create your own repository objects such as tables, programs, transactions. You can create pretty much everything that you want in the SAP system. All customer developments normally take place in a customer namespace. The only restriction is the program name or whatever you're creating should start with either Z or Y. So all objects created by customers should start with Y or Z. So that's your customization. So these are the different ways in which we customize the standard SAP software. So any questions so far on this customizing? Now, since we are running out of time, I'll quickly talk about the different types of applications that we'll be developing. Sunil, you have a question before that? Sunil, do you have a question?
Actually, this is regarding upgrading the system. So while we are upgrading the system, what about the Y or Z programs?
They won't be affected because they won't be available in the standard SAP package, right? So only what is provided as SAP will be upgraded. And when you upgrade, it's not mandatory that every program will be replaced. Depending on the changes, SAP could still be using the old applications only in the new system also. For example, if you look at this MM01 transaction, it's available in 5.0 system, 4.0 system, 6.0 system. So it's the same. They haven't made any changes. But there could be few other programs for which they have made changes. So those would be lost. And
what about the functional changes? Previously, you took one example.
The data would not be affected when you upgrade. So whatever customizing you are doing to your system, those are typically saved as some, they are updated in some tables, the data. So that won't be affected. Only the repository objects, the programs, table definitions, those get affected with the upgrade. The data that you have in your system won't be affected.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Subha Reddy, you have a question?
Yeah, what about the extensions? What are the color?
I'll be coming to that. I'll just share this slide. So what type of developments that you do as an ABAP consultant? If you have looked at any job postings for ABAP, you would typically see good knowledge in RICF objects. So by RICF, they means reports, interfaces, conversions, extensions, and forms. So anything that you develop in your SAP system, you can categorize that into one of these. Either you'll be developing reports or interface programs or conversion programs or extensions or forms. So we'll see these reports. For example, you want to see all the bank transactions that you have done in last month. What you'll do, you'll log into your bank website and then open the statement link, enter the date range for which you want to see the statement, click submit. That application will fetch all the transactions between the given date range and show some output. That's a typical report. Whenever you do a transaction, the bank stores that information in their database, and this application will query that database, fetch the data as per your date range, and show you the output. Right? So that's a typical report. So reports typically provide read-only access to the database. Right? When you're looking at the bank statement, you can only see the data that is saved. You cannot create a new transaction. You cannot change the data that you see. It's a read-only access to your data. So for example, let's say we have a warehouse where I store all the stock, and again, when we maintain this inventory, we again follow different process. One process is SOI, supplier owned inventory, wherein I don't buy everything that I want to sell. My supplier will give me the goods. For example, if I'm an electronics showroom, I'm selling washing machines, color televisions, then I don't need to buy all these washing machines and color televisions beforehand and then sell it to my customer. If I'm following this SOI process, what I'll do is the supplier who's supplying me this washing machine or the color television, he would keep his stock in my warehouse, and he would say, whenever you sell this to your customer, at that time you can pay me for that. Till that time, the inventory is owned by me. You don't own it, but I can keep it in your warehouse so that the moment you get an order, you can ship it to your customers. Now, the problem with this type of arrangement is, let's say there are 5 different showrooms in the city. I'm doing very less business. I'm hardly selling 1 washing machine per month, but other showrooms are selling 30 washing machines per month, and the same supplier is supplying these washing machines to everyone. In that case, I have some 10 washing machines lying in my warehouse which I'm not able to sell, but other showrooms, they're actually falling short of washing machines. Whatever the supplier has given them, they've exhausted that and they want more washing machines. And here in my warehouse, there are 10 lying idle. So it would be better if the supplier can move these washing machines from my warehouse to another warehouse for another vendor or another showroom. It would make more sense, right? So the supplier says, because of this problem, I'll keep this washing machine in your warehouse, but you pay me when you sell it to your customer or after 30 days, whichever is earlier. Within 30 days, if you're selling it, good, you can pay me. If you're not selling it for 30 days, I'll assume that it is sold, so you have to pay me. So this becomes billable if you reach 30 days from the day you received it in your warehouse. Now, as a warehouse manager, I need to know the age of my inventory so that I can take a decision whether I should return this back to the supplier or I should pay the supplier, because I'll be billable if I cross 30 days, right? So whenever I receive the stock in my warehouse, I'll be updating in the system the date in which I received that particular washing machine, right? So my user says, I want you to create one report where you can check all the stock available in the warehouse and calculate the age. You can simply subtract the current date from the date we received. That gives you the number of days since we received that particular product in our warehouse. So just show me that age of the inventory. So since all this data is already there in the database, I can simply create one report wherein I can use the data stored in the database, apply the logic of calculating the age in my report, and then show it to the user saying that this particular washing machine we received 20 days back, this one we received 15 days back. So based on that, my manager can take a decision whether to pay the supplier or return it to the supplier, right? So you create such type of reports in SAP. So you can create simple reports to very complex reports in ABAP. So we have something called classical reports, we have ALV reports. Again, the reports can be normal reports or interactive reports. So you can create an interactive classical report, an interactive ALV report. So you can create from very simple report to very complex reports in ABAP. And reports are something which you'll be working on very frequently. So reports and forms are two developments you'll be working on very frequently as an ABAP consultant. 80% of the times you'll be creating either reports or forms as an ABAP consultant. So these are very frequent developments that we'll get to work on. So these are your typical report developments where all the data is already there in the database. We are extracting that data to make some sense out of that data. Then interface programs. What are these interface programs? Anything you want to push from your SAP system to an external system, or you are receiving some data from the external system and you want to post that data in your SAP system. So for that requirements, we need to create these interface programs. We have outbound interface, inbound interface programs. In inbound interface, you are receiving the data from the external system, and you'll be creating a program to use that data and post the information in your SAP system. For example, let's say I gave you one example that I'm running a business where I'm manufacturing these laptop computers, right? To procure the raw material, I need to place an order with Intel to procure the motherboards, right? So I can create one purchase order and send it to Intel. And let's say Intel bills me, they'll send me one invoice, billing document, and Intel will create this billing document and send it to me. So I'm exchanging some data between my system and my business partner system. In this case, Intel is the business partner. So how do we exchange this data? If Intel is sending me an invoice, then one way is take a printout of the invoice and courier it to me. But that's a very time-consuming process. It takes a lot of time, right? You waste 1 or 2 days in that process. All these companies exchange data through an electronic medium. We have something called EDI for that. So what we do is, the moment Intel sends me this information, they can directly pass this data to my system. And in my system, it will trigger one program which will use this data and create a billing document in my system using that data. So that is an inbound interface program where you are receiving data from an Excel system, and using that data, you're creating something in your SAP system. That's a typical inbound interface program. And you are sending a purchase order to Intel. Then I'll create this purchase order in the system, and I can run one program which will extract this purchase order data and push it to the other system, my business partner system. That's an outbound interface program. So any data you want to exchange between your SAP system and an external system, we develop these interface programs. So we have normal interface programs where you simply extract data from the system and store it in one folder in the application server. Now what is application server, you'll understand tomorrow. Or else we have this BAPIs, business APIs. How many of you understand what is an API? You can raise your hand. What is an API? Tatni? Padma Kumar? Padma Kumar?
Yes, application programming interface.
So what exactly that means?
Hello? Basically, it is a function prototype using which you can call functions and execute.
Okay. For example, let's say I'm creating my website, then we provide this, we develop these APIs, we call them BAPIs, business APIs, and these APIs are typically implemented as function modules in SAP. So those are also you will be developing as interface program. So all this comes under interface program. So we'll be learning all that, how to develop inbound interface, outbound interface, how to develop these BAPIs. So all these things we'll be learning in this course. Then we have these conversion programs. Let's say you are implementing the SAP system for the first time, and it doesn't mean that this is the first time you're using a system. You could be using some other system before implementing SAP, and you have already maintained all the data about your materials, about your customers, about your vendors. So all this data is already stored in your existing system. Now when you implement SAP for the first time, this data that you have in your legacy system should be moved to your SAP system, right? You cannot simply copy and paste the data. There should be some validations that should be performed. The data should be converted to SAP format. For example, in SAP, the material number is an alphanumeric value with up to 18 characters. In your legacy system, you could be using something else, right? So this has to be converted to a format that is used in SAP. So for those requirements, we'll be using these conversion programs. So we have something called LSMW, which is a tool provided by SAP, using which you can easily push data from your legacy system to your SAP system. Or we can develop these BDC programs. All these are your conversion programs. So we'll also be learning all that, how to develop these conversion programs, BDCs, LSMWs, and all those things. So that's your conversion programs. Then extensions, all the enhancements that you do, modifications that you do, the new developments that you do in the system, all this comes under extensions. So where you are extending the standard SAP functionality, right? So that comes under extension. So everything comes under this extension. And there are a few third-party applications also which you can integrate with your SAP system. So you can also install those third-party applications to integrate. For example, let's say you want to go in the field and take orders. Obviously, you cannot carry your laptop and log into the SAP system and take the order directly, right? So my sales guy, he'll be carrying one handheld device to capture the orders. So if you have seen this Pepsi or Coke salespeople, they'll go to each shop and take the orders. So they'll be capturing that information in one handheld device. So they'll take all the orders in one handheld device, and once they come back to office, all they have to do is connect that handheld device to the system, and all the data would be posted in your SAP system. So for that, we use these third-party applications which will do that. So that also you can use with your SAP system. Then forms, these are, as I said, frequent developments, one of the frequent developments. So when you create a purchase order, for example, this is a typical report. So this is how the report output will look, something like this. But these reports have some limitations on how much you can print, how much formatting you can do in the output. But sometimes when we create these documents, the user says, okay, I'm creating this purchase order in the system or this billing document in the system, and I want to take a printout of this document. He's creating this document in the system, and he says, I want to take a printout. And since these are all legal documents, there are some legal requirements. An invoice should have this mandatory information. This is how the format should be of the invoice. There's a standard format that we follow. So we need to create that in a standard format. Let me open a document. Okay, so here you can see this is a typical form output. The same invoice details you are printing in a different format. So here you are printing the invoice number, here you are printing the exporter details, ultimate consignee details, purchasing consignee details, some terms of payment, then you are printing the item details, what are the items that were shipped, memory 256 MB, this is the quantity, this is the unit price and total price. Then at the end, you are printing some totals, line totals, subtotals, all this stuff. So this is a typical form output. So if the user says, I want to print my invoice in a certain format, I want my company logo on the left hand side, something on the right hand side. So you can do this by developing these forms. So we'll be learning. So we have SAP scripts and something called smart forms. So we'll be learning all that in this course. So we'll be learning how to develop these forms. So you can categorize all the developments that you do into one of these categories, RICEF, and in some job postings you also see something called RICEFW. W stands for workflow. So apart from reports, interfaces, conversions, extensions, forms, they expect you to know workflow also. So these are the typical RICEF objects that we'll be developing in the company. Any questions? Subbareddy, you have a question? So tomorrow we'll be talking about this architecture of an SAP system. As I said, today we haven't talked about anything technical. So, but tomorrow's session we'll try to understand. I'll try to give a technical overview on the SAP system, how it is set up, and what are the different layers that make up your SAP system. So it's a more technical session tomorrow. So I'm done for today. This is what I wanted to make you understand. The idea was to make you understand what exactly we do as an ABAP consultant in a company, why does a company need an ABAP consultant, and what kind of developments we typically develop. Subbareddy, you have a question? Let me go to someone else. Sunny? Shamba Shiva?
Sure. Hello.
Yep, go ahead please.
Sir, we have these applications like RICEF. These are the applications we can develop, or we have existing applications in SAP.
SAP also provides all this. SAP provides some standard reports. It provides standard BAPIs. For every transaction there's a BAPI available. It provides standard interface programs. So SAP already provides everything. I'll say SAP provides everything that you need to run your business. So
as you told, report applications are like only read-only access type. I mean, like, no, can we develop report applications so that I mean, how it can assure that we are not able to access the database?
Means you modify the data?
Yes.
Generally, if the user requirement is that I just want to see some information, then we create a report. If the user says, I want to see the information, at the same time I also want to modify the information, then that also is possible. I can also extract the data and show it to the user and give the option to the user where he can modify that data and update it back to the database. That also we can do.
So is there any API providing all this?
You don't need an API for that. APIs we use if you want to exchange data between different systems. Here everything is within the system, so you don't need an API for that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. But SAP provides a lot of stuff, lot of function modules, lot of stuff. For example, anything, there are a lot of standard SAP function modules provided. So any functionality you are looking for, there's one function module. There's thousands of function modules provided by SAP. So quite a few interface programs, everything is available. For example, let's say I'm taking orders, and obviously I have some 100 products in my stock. I have some 100 stock, and I cannot check the stock every time before taking the order, right? So I can take the orders, and let's say I have 100 available and I'm expecting some 500 in next 5 days. then I can simply take the orders and run one program which can reschedule these orders. So for example, it can prioritize based on who is placing the order, what is the quantity, by when they need, and I can simply run one program which can reschedule all these orders. So there's one program provided by SAP for that. If you open this V2, it's a rescheduling program. So I can simply take the orders, run this program every day in the night, and by morning it will reschedule all the orders based on the available stock, how much we are expecting, how much is in production. So it will consider all that information and automatically reschedule stuff for you. So SAP provides all this stuff automatically by default when you implement SAP. Okay. Supriya, you have a question? Funny, you have a question?
Hi, Kiran.
Funny, I'm losing your voice. Can you repeat? I can, but there's some static. Yep. IDOCs are interfaces. They act like interface. And they are not exactly any program. IDOC is simply a data container. So before you push data, we send the data in that IDOC format. You can think of it something like a notepad with some data. So I cannot call it a program. So IDOC is simply a data container. It's not exactly a program.
Okay. And what is the difference between BAPI and SAP?
What's the difference between BAPI and?
Interface.
BAPI itself is one type of interface. In interfaces, depending on your requirement, for example, there's a lot of background noise, so I'm muting your microphone. For example, you want to create one program in such a way that this program can be called directly from the external system and do something in your SAP system. For example, let's say you have one Java application that you want to use as a front end to create a purchase order. But whenever the user inputs all the details about this purchase order or an accounting document, for example, then this data should be posted in your SAP system because that's where you're saving all the accounting documents. Now this Java application is opened by the user in a different system, and he's giving all the information about the accounting document. When he clicks on save, that data should be posted in your SAP system, not in the system in which he has opened this web application, right? So in that case, what we can do is, as an ABAP consultant, we can develop one BAPI, or there are standard BAPIs available. All these BAPIs start with BAPI. So I can develop, for example, there's a BAPI for accounting documents called accounting document post. You can simply call this BAPI provided by SAP, and whenever the user uses this web application and clicks on save, at that point they can call this BAPI, pass on all the details to this BAPI, and this BAPI will create the accounting document in your SAP system. So where you are directly posting the data, calling it. So in that case, we develop a BAPI. In another requirement, the other external application will simply collect all that information and save that information in one folder in your SAP system. So the data is sent directly, saved in one folder. So if you go to this transaction, here we have different folders. So these are your system folders in the application server. Tomorrow, as I said, you'll be seeing understanding what is this application layer and all this stuff. So here I have one directory. In this directory, I'm saving some data. So they're simply pushing the data. This data is stored in this directory, which I can process. So for that, I'll create one inbound interface program where I'll take this data stored in this directory and then process that data to post the data in my system. Or else I can simply extract the data from the database and save it as a file in one directory. That's an outbound interface programs. So we have different types of interface programs that we develop based on your need. Atul, you have a question?
Actually, I lost a small portion of this training. So can I visit at the website and I can...
This session I'm recording anyway, so I'll be mailing you a link where you can download this recording, today's session.
Okay. Okay. Thanks a lot.
Bye.